Welcome back. This is Jaime with Port St. Lucie Mortgage Brokers. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with Chris Walker with Keller Williams, Port St. Lucie. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning.
How are you doing today? Same here. Today, we have a fun topic to talk about, solar panels. So it's fun for us to talk about it, but not during the transaction, right?
That is correct. And so we have done solar panel transactions, and we are kind of familiar with some of the ins and outs from the seller side. Perfect.
So I think this is, you had brought this topic to me, like solar panels, and I think this is a great topic. Not only have we come across this together on previous transactions, but there's a lot of people out there that are being sold solar panels, and they really don't know how that might impact a future sale, or how somebody may be able to qualify or not qualify for your house now because of those solar panels. And I know you've had intense, a ton of experience with this, and I would love for you to share with everyone how you've overcome or kind of worked around that. So
sure. We've had two listings where there was a loan on the solar panel, and we have had one buyer that acquired a home that had solar panels. So we've got 3 transactions under our belt. Whether that makes us a master of these transactions or not, we've at least got some experiences to draw from. We're also in mastermind groups with other agents that have solar panel home experiences. And then we've also done a kind of a point in time analysis of homes in the last 6 months here in Port St. Lucie that had solar panels. And from publicly available data, we've been able to see what happens. Basically, when we sit with the seller, we say, here are really your options on the loans. The first option is to pay off the loan at closing. The second option is to ask the buyer to assume the loan at closing, which is what the salespeople tell you can do. There might be a mix of the two, and then there are actually solar panels that are leased, and that's a whole different ball game that require a transfer of the lease. Okay. Now, most sellers are hoping that option number 2 works, that the buyer can assume the loan.
and at least they go into the selling transaction with that hope, right? Like that's how they come to you, like, hey, I want you to sell my house, and I wanted you to sell it with that, with that
debt on top of it.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. All right, so tell us how you walk a buyer, or I'm sorry, a seller through those 4, like, if you could just expand on maybe what that would look like for the buyer. For the seller, I keep saying buyer, sorry, for the seller.
Yeah, okay, so option number 1 is to pay the loan off at closing. Our analysis of 80 some odd transactions over the last 6 months have seen 9 out of 10 sellers pay off the loan at closing. In other words, the 1 out of 10 that managed to get a loan transferred, that's a unicorn. And we actually tell the sellers up front that you want the most people to be able to be looking at your house, not trying to wait for the one person who might want it. The second thing that we talk about with our sellers is, at least with our buyers are not looking for homes with solar panels. So the solar panel is a nice, oh, that's nice, but we have not had a buyer say, I want a house with solar panels. So it's not really a selling feature to an active buyer.
And let me pause you there, because that's a point that I don't hear often, and it honestly, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that. Real buyers don't ask for that.
No, not ours.
I honestly, I talk to buyers, my whole, as a mortgage broker, all I do is talk to buyers, right? And they tell me, I'm like, hey, what do you need? What are you looking for? And they're like, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom. And I'm like, no, the mortgage. What kind of mortgage? But they do tell me what their features are for the house that they're looking for, 3 bedrooms or whatever the case may be. And I work with the realtors to kind of achieve that. I've not heard a buyer ever say solar panels, and it never dawned on me. But thank you for bringing that up. So yeah. It's not a want that you hear. I'm sorry. So go ahead.
We hear things like, I want a 3-bedroom. I want a 2-bathroom. I want a swimming pool. I want a lanai. I mean, we hear things like that. We have never heard anyone say, I want solar panels.
Perfect. Great point. All right. So the first one is then paying it off. Obviously, that would require them to pay it off prior to, if they have the funds, or just wait till closing and then use the proceeds or whatever to pay. The second one you mentioned was to ask the buyer to assume it. Let's talk about on that one, because I think that, like you said, that's the one that sellers sit on and hope for.
That's correct. So it's part of the sales pitch from the solar panels. They're like, oh, it's just easy to transfer the loan to somebody else. But we are finding it's not so easy. And there are two primary reasons for that. One is that, and this is more where your expertise would come in.
Yeah, you're talking. Yep.
And so tell us from the lender side why that's not easy.
So a couple of reasons. Number one, so I'll start with the reason why they want that to be the best case scenario would be, number one, obviously it's more money for them. But the reason why it's going to be more money for that seller is because they believe that their house is worth more because of the solar panels. And what a lot of people don't know, or a lot of sellers don't know, is that the solar panel, the appraiser does not include that value of the solar panels if they're financed. So you have to have them paid off prior to an appraiser going out to your home to literally include it into the value. So you may think that your house, let's say your house is worth $300,000 and you think this $40,000 solar panel should be included. Guess what? If you have it financed, they're just going to come in at $300,000 in that example. So it's very hard for the buyer to then assume it because it's not even in the equity, right? It's not something that they could finance like through their mortgage or something like that. So now you're asking the buyer to literally now take that payment on. So the first part is it's not in the value of the home. So it's hard for it's harder for the buyer to assume it. The second part is for it affects, it's going to come with a monthly payment. That monthly payment, and sometimes they're pretty high, affects the debt to income ratio for that buyer to qualify. For most cases, they won't qualify, especially with these $400 or $500 payments. So for those two reasons, it doesn't work, generally speaking. Now, I'll simplify that. When these files come to me, or these situations come to me as a lender, it's either there's only two options that I'm seeing. Either the seller pays for it or the file dies. I really don't see any other options on the lender side. It just doesn't come back to me. Now, could they get transferred? Could they get assumed? Yes, especially if they're cash offers. Right. So but that's how I would say those are the two ways that it affects the lending part of it for the buyers.
Right. I think what we are also seeing among buyers, particularly in some of these price points, they are buying at the max they are qualified for. And if let's say they're buying a $400,000 house because that's the maximum amount of their pre-approval, there's just no room to go $450,000 because of the $50,000 solar panels on top.
Correct.
And while in our point in time study, 1 out of 10 did get a loan assumption done, the reality is that's such a unicorn that a seller is going to wind up with a house sitting on the market for a much longer period of time than if they just kind of bit the bullet, so to speak, and paid it off at closing.
Yep, I agree. Now you had two other options, a mix of the two, which obviously that would kind of touch on the two that we just talked about. But the fourth one, I don't know if you could add a little bit more color to that, which is leased solar panels.
We recently came across a situation where the solar panels were leased; they were not a loan. And while the pitch was the lease could be transferred to a future buyer, it seems that the exact same situation would come up. It would affect their debt to income ratio. With the leased solar panels, they're not even owned. You're just paying a monthly fee for it. So it seems that assuming that you could transfer a loan to a future buyer is such a long shot. That from the financing side and the evidence and the data makes it really hard.
Okay. So have you, and I know you have because you mentioned it at the beginning, but on the scenarios that you've come across this situation, um, any suggestions you would give other realtors?
Advice that I would give to realtors would be talk with your sellers about paying off the solar panel loan at closing. It might hurt. It probably will hurt.
It would hurt having that conversation.
Yeah, yeah. It's a pain that will be felt.
Yeah.
It actually becomes a positive marketing point of being able to sell your house to a buyer who does get the benefit of your choice. The benefit being that you install the solar panel so that you didn't have to pay electricity bill. The buyer will get that benefit. There's no doubt about it. That does make your house attractive to a buyer. As you have pointed out, solar panels add no value to the appraisal. So your house is not worth more.
Nope.
Helping sellers to see that is a hard conversation to have, but it's one that must be held.
Yeah. And it's hard. Look, if we're paying something, we purchased it, we went through the process of getting them installed, and we've been paying these monthly payments for 6 months, a year, 5 years, whatever that term is. And for somebody to say there's no value in that, it's hard.
That is correct.
It's hard. So I completely understand. And look, and we could all be in that position in anything in our life. If we're told something that we believe in that has no value, it would not only hurt our feelings, but it would just make it difficult to proceed. But anyway, so what other tips would you recommend? Obviously that was for realtors. As far as for sellers, what would you advise them if there was any additional thoughts on that for the sellers?
Our approach for our team has been to present the data that 9 out of 10 sellers, to get the deal done, pay off the loan at closing.
Okay.
Yeah,
being upfront, just
be upfront about it.
Show numbers. I like that.
To show the numbers. And we would probably push for an agreement up front that, yes, we'll try to find a buyer who is willing and able to assume the loan, but if after a couple of weeks, just go ahead and let's market it as loan will be paid off.
And Chris, and I that answer is perfect, and it shows why you're successful is because you're having that upfront conversation, that hard conversation up front, where I've spoken with other realtors, and look, I work with a lot of great realtors, but some of them struggle to have that conversation. I get the call like, hey, Jaime, what should I tell them? Right? Like, oh my God, they're going to fire me, or, whatever the case may be. But it shows why you're successful is you got to have those conversations. Even if and look, you're willing to do what they want, right? You're willing to put it on the market. You're willing to list it that way. But at the end of the day, when you come back to them and say, it ain't working, it's not a shock to them. They're not, right? You've already had that conversation up front. So that was perfect. So any parting words, anything you want to leave us with? Tell us a little bit about how someone could actually get a hold of you if you don't have anything else to share on that topic.
Certainly, we are the Casas de Walker team. So Casas, CASAS. And we can be found all over social media. And we are at Keller Williams in Port St. Lucie.
And your videos are funny. If for nothing else, you guys gotta follow that. Is it Instagram, right? You guys
Instagram, TikTok, YouTube,
this guy.
All the different places.
I'm gonna have you help me with my videos because mine ain't funny, but yours are funny. But I'll put all your contact information on the video, and I'll actually search your Instagram because I touched on that, so I'll actually add that as well. So if there's anything else you want me to add, let me know. But other than that, Chris, thanks for the time. That was very valuable, and I'm sure a lot of people are gonna appreciate your information. So, all right. Other than that, thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon.